There are a lot of fitness apps out there, and to be honest, I was never fully satisfied with any of them. Some are simply not very good, others are actually well made, but they come with high subscription costs, and then there are apps that look polished on the surface, but from a training science perspective, they are often surprisingly weak. As a professor of sports medicine and exercise physiology, with 20 years experience as a fitness trainer, that always bothered me. I wanted an app that is practical, clean, flexible, and scientifically grounded. One that I would actually want to use myself. So I decided to create exactly that kind of app. One that is free to use, grounded in real training practice, physiology, and long usability. I know some features are definitely a bit more niche and are probably more relevant for ambitious athletes, coaches, or even research settings. But that was important to me. It should stay simple if you want to keep things simple and still be powerful if we want to go deeper. So in this video, I want to give you a full walkthrough of the app, show you the main features, explain what makes it different, and also show you how I think it can be used in practice. So let's get started. The first page of the app is the dashboard. And this is really where your training week begins. One idea that was very important to me is that every week starts fresh from Monday to Sunday. You get a new chance, whether that means building momentum or getting back on track. At the top, you get a quick visual overview of what you have actually trained during the current week. Strength training is shown in blue, endurance training in red, and if you did both on the same day, that appears in purple. I like this because within a second you can see how your week is developing. You don't need to dig through different menus or long logs. You just open the app and immediately get a visual impression of your training pattern. Right below that, you see the daily motivational quote. This is a small feature, but I think it adds something. Sometimes all you need is a small push to get off the couch and start training. And by the way, if you feel that someone else needs that push, you can also share that quote. The next important section is your goals. And this is where the app becomes much more personal, as training goals are obviously different from one person to another. For strength training, for example, you can decide whether you want to count completed sessions or sets. And for endurance training, you can define whether distance, duration, or number of sessions is what matters most to you. Based on those goals, the app also calculates your streaks. The streak tile shows you how long you have been consistently meeting your personal targets, and for every continuous month, you can earn a star. I wanted that feature to feel motivating, but also meaningful, not just a random batch system, but something that reflects real consistency over time. You can also track your steps if you connect the app with Health Connect. That gives you another layer of daily activity tracking, especially if you want to keep an eye not only on formal training sessions, but also on overall movement. Below that, you have the quick start tile for strength and endurance. They are simply there to make the app faster. So if you want to start a workout, you should not have to go through several menus first. You just tap on the tile and begin. And finally, at the bottom, there is the gym knowledge tile that connects the app to the educational part of this project, including videos from this YouTube channel. I really like that combination because the app is not only about tracking what you do, but also about helping you understand training a little bit better. So overall, the dashboard is designed to have three things: give you orientation, keep you motivated, and get you quickly into action. Now let's move into the strength training, because this is probably the most detailed part of the app. The idea here was not just to build a simple workout logger, but to create something that stays practical in everyday use while still offering more depth if you want it. So this is the strength training overview. From here, you can either start with an empty plan or choose one of the pre-built plans, for example, the basics plan. If you start with an empty plan, this page opens up, and from here you can add exercises using the plus button. This brings you to the exercise picker, which is really one of the core elements of the strength module. And the reason I put a lot of work into this is that exercise selection sounds simple, but in many apps it becomes surprisingly frustrating. The filtering logic is often weak, inconsistent, or just not practical. Here, the filters actually interact with each other, which makes the whole process much more intuitive. For example, if you select arm presses, the target muscles automatically set to shoulders and the equipment to dumbbells. And if you want to go a bit more nerdy, there's even an anatomy-based filter mode where you can select by involved muscles, including the correct Latin anatomical names. There's also a multi-select option, so you can add several exercises at once instead of repeating the same process again and again. Once the exercises are added, they appear directly in the training plan, and then you can add sets to each exercise and start entering the usual things like kilograms and reps. For each set, you can also mark whether it was allowed. That matters because only those sets are really meaningful for personal record calculations. You can also add additional markers to sets. That becomes useful later during analysis because not every set is truly comparable. For example, if you performed an exercise once with blood flow restriction and another time without it, it may not make sense to treat those sets as equivalent. So these markers give you a way to document that and later exclude certain sets from analysis if needed. As soon as you enter repetitions, the rest timer starts automatically, but if you do not want that, you can also turn that off in the settings section. There's even a metronome built in, and that is definitely one of the more niche features and probably more relevant for research settings or highly controlled training where movement velocity needs to be standardized. At the top, you also have a few useful tools for each exercise. You can open an exercise guide, or you can view the muscles involved and access key anatomical information about those muscles, including things like origin and insertion. So this also gives you a nice way to pick up a bit of functional anatomy along the way. Next to that, there is an exercise-specific statistics view, so you can quickly look at your progress. This bar chart shows you the weight, the reps, and the total tonnage, both per set and across the full exercise. And besides that, there is a trash icon, so if you want to remove the exercise from the certain training session, you can do that by clicking on that icon. Then you can simply swipe to the next exercise, and if you want to change the exercise order or define a superset, you can do that through the menu. I even added a PDF print version of the plan. That may sound a bit unusual in a training app, but I thought it might actually be useful for some users. So overall, the strength module is designed to work on different levels. If you just want a clean and efficient way to log your workouts, it does that. But if you also want more structure, more filtering logic, more detailed tracking, or even more research-oriented features, those are there too. Now let's move on to the endurance module. Just like in the strength training, the goal here was not to make things complicated for the sake of complexity. The idea was to create something that is easy to start, practical during training, and flexible enough for different types of users. At the same time, this module is not really designed for pure endurance athletes who need very advanced endurance-specific features. There are already dedicated apps for that. This part of the app is mainly built for fitness-oriented users who do not only lift weights but also want to include some endurance training in a structured way. So from here, you can choose between indoor and outdoor endurance training, and that distinction matters because both settings need different things. For outdoor training, the app uses GPS-based tracking, so if you go for a mountain bike session, for example, the app opens this map view, and from here you can start the recording with the record button and then track the session directly. During the session, you get the key live information on the screen like duration, distance, pace, and related metrics. And if you want to record heart rate as well, the app can access a connected Bluetooth device. Once the session is finished, you can add your RPE and a note, which gives a bit more context to the training data. For indoor endurance, the logic is different. Here you can choose from different indoor training modes, each with slightly different settings depending on the type of the exercise. So for example, if you use a cycle ergometer, the workflow is built around what actually matters in that context. You also start and record the session from here with a record button, and then heart rate can be included as well, of course. And in the middle of the screen, you can define or adjust the training intensities. So if you're riding at 100 watts for 10 minutes, for example, you can set that up very quickly with the plus button. But you can also enter intervals. And when you do that, the app can even guide you with voice prompts, for example, 120 watts in 3, 2, 1. And the reason I built it like that is very practical. Most endurance devices do not offer a universal interface, and of course I cannot realistically integrate every machine from any manufacturer. So instead of depending on the device itself, the logic sits inside the app and you simply adjust the machine to that target intensity the app gives you. That makes the system much more flexible. And if you already have a predefined protocol in your gym or lab, you can program that into the app and save it for later use. So again, the goal was to make this practical not only for spontaneous sessions, but also for structured and repeatable protocols. And just like in the outdoor training, you can also add RPE and notes afterwards. So overall, the endurance module is meant to be practical, structured, and flexible enough for the kind of user who wants to combine endurance work with broader fitness training. Now let's move on to the analyzer section, because this is where the app helps you to look beyond individual workouts and see the bigger picture. The first thing you see here is the calendar view. And I really like this part because it gives you a very fast visual overview of your training over time. Just like on the dashboard, the colors immediately show what happened on a given day of the month or the year. Strength training is shown in blue, endurance in red, and if you did both, that appears in purple. So even before looking at numbers, you already get a useful impression of your personal training pattern. And the calendar is interactive. If you tap on a specific day, you can open the day details view. This gives you a much closer look at what actually happened on that day. At the top, all strength exercises from that session are listed, including all sets, so you can really go back and review exactly what you did. Below that, the endurance part is shown. If it was an outdoor session, you get the route on a map. If it was an indoor session, you will see the interval view instead. You can also move through the three graphs with a slider, and the icon shows you where you are on the map. So it is not just a simple static summary, it gives you a more detailed and visual review of the sessions. After the calendar and day details, we move now into the strength analysis graphs. The first step here is to define the time period you want to look at. And that is important because the interpretation changes a lot depending on whether you look on a week or a month or a longer block. And then you can choose what should actually be displayed in the graph. The default setting is all muscles, all exercise and tonnage. But there is quite a few more possibilities depending on what you want to look at. So if you want a broader overview, you can keep it simple. But if you want to dig a little bit deeper, you can make the graph much more specific. Right below that, there is the pie chart. This shows you the distribution of sets across muscle groups for the selected time period. And what I like here is that it is not just a static chart. If you tap on one of the pie chart segments, the app shows you which exercises are actually behind that muscle group in that selected period. The colors are coded from blue to red, with red representing the most frequent categories. So it becomes very easy to see where most of your training volume is going. Below that, there is the heat map, which follows a similar logic in terms of color coding. Again, blue to red, showing you which muscle groups have received less or more training. And I think this view is especially helpful because it gives you an immediate sense of balance. You can quickly spot whether you may have neglected a certain muscle group. And I think this view is especially helpful because it gives you an immediate sense of balance. You can quickly spot whether you may have neglected a certain muscle group. And if you set the time range to 1 week, it becomes particularly practical when you are not sure what to train on a certain day. It gives you a quick visual reminder of what may be underrepresented, so it helps you, for example, not to forget your leg day. Below that, you have the endurance analysis. Here, the same time range selected above still applies. By default, all the endurance sports are included, and on the y-axis, the default setting is duration. But just like the strength graphs, you can adjust the axis and combine variables differently depending on what kind of question matters most to you. That is important because different users want different insights. So some may care mainly about duration, others more about distance, frequency, or the overall development of the endurance work. So the analyzer section is really designed to make the data flexible and interpretable rather than just storing it. Before I finish, let me show you the settings section, because this is where a lot of the app personalization happens. First, you can define your preferred units. So if you want to use kilograms or pounds or metric or imperial units, you can set that here. You can also enter your personal data, which helps tailor certain calculations and app behavior more appropriate to you. For heart rate related features, you can define your heart rate zones here as well. Those can either be calculated using a simple formula or with the Carvonen method, which also takes your resting heart rate into account. So if you want a slightly more individualized heart rate setup, that is possible too. You can also disable the step tracking here if you do not want to use that part of the app. That is important to me because not every user wants every feature turned on. The app should be flexible enough to match different preferences. Another practical setting is the rest timer configuration. So if you want to define your preferred rest duration, you can do that here as well. And you can also see how much storage space the app itself and your training data are currently using. In practice, that is actually very little, but I still think it is helpful to show it because some users, understandably, want to know how much space an app and its stored data take up. And then at the bottom, there is one of the most important parts of the app, and this is the export and import functions. You can export your data to Excel, which is useful for anyone who likes to analyze the data further on their own. But even more important is the database backup. All of the data are stored locally on your phone. From a privacy perspective, I think this is a very good thing because your training data are not just automatically sitting on an external server. But it also means you have more responsibility yourself. So it is really important to create regular backups. Because if you lose your phone, reinstall the app or switch devices without a backup, your data may be lost. So the app is designed to be practical enough for everyday use, but detailed enough to give you real insights if you want to go deeper. You absolutely do not need to use every feature. You can keep it simple and just use it as a clean and efficient training log. But if you want more structure, more analysis, and more control over your own data, those options are there. And that is exactly what I wanted this app to be. So if that sounds interesting to you, feel free to check it out, test it for yourself and let me know what you think. And if you enjoy content around training, sports medicine and exercise physiology, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. See you soon. Bye-bye.